Welcome to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm John Bernard. This is Nick. We are the Kairouz Brothers, giving you the combat sports news around the world. Breaking news last night, Nick Dana White took to Instagram Live. Everyone was waiting on him. They waited the whole day for him in America. He went live at 1 a.m., had some big announcements.
Well, he did the usual teaser. Hey, I'm going live. I'm announcing fight news. I'm going to be going on in the next hour. Some 10 to 15 hours later, he finally does go live. It always takes some time, but he did drop a lot of fight news.
The fight that really was the biggest draw, I think, was Merab versus Sean O'Malley at UFC 316. That's headlining in New Jersey, the Prudential Center. Co-main on that, don't really care for.
No. Pena versus Kayla Harrison. She's basically a man. I'll watch that match.
I'll watch it. I'll bet on it. I'm just saying I'm not excited for it as much as I am the other fight. And the other fight that was announced was Carlos Prates versus Ian Gary. Ian Gary stepping up again after Carlos had to get a replacement fighter because he lost his place on the UFC 314.
He was supposed to be
Miami
fighting
card.
in Miami, but they've shifted because Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree has also been called off. So this is the match that's going to go headline UFC in Kansas City. But I like these fight announcements. I think Kayla Harrison's actually a good fight. It's obviously been in the works for some time.
Yeah.
Sugar Sean versus Merab. Look, we've already seen it. I think it's going to go the same way. But I think it's a top fight. Carlos Prates, Carlos Prates versus Ian Gary is actually a very, very good fight. Like, that's two high-level strikers
one of the
going at
most
it.
entertaining fights in the division, and we'll touch on that. But I want to speak about this. Is Dana White the most relevant CEO of any company? This guy just gets it. He hops onto social media. He knows how to interact with the fans. He's answering questions in the live. You know what I mean? Like, what other CEO? I don't see the CEO of Walmart. I don't see the CEO of Apple interacting with customers.
Terrible comparison.
But I'm just saying, other
they're
promoters.
publicly listed companies that want to have, secrecy, privacy.
But maybe that's the reason for UFC's success. The guy understands social media. He brings creators in. He's got Nina doing interviews. He's got the Nelk Boys. Like, I think he just understands social. Whereas, these other fight promotions, that's why boxing went in the toilet.
Look, I agree with you.
Because they don't understand what people want.
I agree with you that he's unmatched in any way, in the way he promotes his fighters, the way he promotes his fights, the way he promotes just the general UFC. But in saying that, there does come a lot of backlash with that, especially maybe like pre-2020 when he was pro-Trump, when he was doing a lot of political stuff as well. He did cop a lot of backlash. I'm sure the owners of the UFC weren't too happy with Dana White doing that. But in the long run, it's worked out, and he's the most relevant CEO, definitely, especially with all that's happening with Vince McMahon. Don't want to talk about it.
That's what I mean. But
he's faded into obscurity.
You can't name another CEO of a promotion that's as relevant as Dana White. And it's because the UFC is so big. But I'm talking, if you think CEO of any other company, they're not doing what Dana White's doing. They're not working.
Turkey El Sheikh, does it count as CEO?
No, I mean,
His Excellency, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's the equivalent.
He's just got a lot of cash. But I'm saying, you can't name another CEO that probably works as hard and is as socially relevant as Dana White.
You know what I give him credit for as well? Being able to be socially savvy. I mean, he's probably not running his socials account, but to be able to go Instagram Live at his age, mate, job well done.
Yeah, my dad can't work the remote anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know how Dana White's jumping in an ice bath while Instagram living, commenting. He comments on Instagram.
He's in his late 50s now, so he's not young. So for him to be using Instagram Live, the technology, Twitter, the way he's doing it, well done, Dana. That's why your product is getting so much better.
Yeah, he understands it. I don't think anyone is doing it better right now. But let's go to one of his announcements. It's Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Merab for the bantamweight champion. Now, this is a rematch, and this is the hot take of the week, Nick. Going to the hot take. Sugar Sean O'Malley loses this match, and he goes over to boxing because I don't see this rematch going any other way.
Look, I agree with half of that take because I do see him losing this rematch because Merab, as a stylistic matchup, is terrible for Sugar Sean. He's just going to keep shooting and keep shooting and keep shooting all night long, and he's going to be successful because that's exactly what happened last time. And if he can take Umar down, he can take Sugar Sean down.
And I think Sugar Sean is just banking on that one shot that he caught Aljo with, that one shot that he might be able to get Merab with. And no one's really tested Merab's chin, at least in his last 5 fights. The guy is an absolute freak. He's a cardio machine. I think it's going to be the same result as well. And why I say he's going to boxing, Nick, if Sugar Sean loses this, right, where does he go in the UFC? Who does he fight in the division? Does he even want to stick around? You're at the top of the division. You're the superstar. People calling him the face of the UFC, and now all of a sudden you got to fight Corey Sandhagen, Figueiredo. Like, he just, his ego cannot take that. He's going to go be a superstar in the TKO boxing league. He's going to go and box somewhere for big money because he can. He's that UFC guy that can throw hands.
Look, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Okay, you're getting a bit ahead there. If he does lose, this is the UFC. This is why the UFC is great, because you can lose and then still recover. You can lose and then still go on and make a championship run later in your career. Whether he wants to go up to featherweight, because he can do that as well. He's a big bantamweight. He's a tall guy. He can lose this fight and then go on. You got to think, yes, he's a good striker, but boxing is a whole different level. I think they've established that with Ngannou. They've established that with McGregor. UFC fighters, no matter how good of strikers they are, they're not boxers.
He's teased it before. The guy's motivated by money. He said, I would go up against Tank Davis. I would go and fight Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, he says that,
His
but will he
mind
actually
is
do
there.
it?
His mind is there. He said, if Dana let me, I would go and do it. You know, I'm just saying, what do you do in the UFC? If he goes up, he doesn't win any fights at featherweight, let's be honest. If he goes down, you know, yeah, he could go down, but you got to cut that extra weight. Then you're going up against Pantoja. Like, it just doesn't make sense for him to go. Yeah. And boxing is a viable decision. Maybe he links up with Dana. Let me be the face of this TKO boxing league.
I'm saying Max Holloway lost to Volkanovski 3 times. No one was calling him to go to boxing. That's one opponent.
That's a great example. I will say that's a great example.
Sugar Sean has only lost to Merab. Okay, he had that one loss that he claims isn't a loss against Cheeto Vera, but he avenged that. So if he does lose to Merab, that's just the guy that he can't beat.
I just think
and he can move on and do other things. He can fight for a BMF title. He can fight for other status things in the UFC. He's so many more options. He wouldn't just go over that quickly. If he does lose maybe his next fight, then maybe I'll consider
I just don't think his ego can take not being able to consistently fight for a champion, be the champion, be the face of an organization.
It is something because, one, I don't think he deserves a rematch because he's kind of the golden boy. He's Dana's golden boy. The way even Dana was selling it in the Instagram Live, like, you know, he's the best striker in this division. It's like, come on, Dana. He got mopped by Merab, okay? He was questionably beaten, what's the Russian guy's name? Peter Yan. Yeah. That was a decision victory, which I don't think he deserved either. So he is someone that I do believe doesn't deserve this rematch and is getting gifted this title shot. And, like, it doesn't make sense, really. Merab had to fight Umar in January and then has to fight again now. Sugar Sean took off from the title fight last year in July, maybe even later in the year. He's had that much of a break longer. I know he had the shoulder injury, but, like, he had to have a fight first before going to the title. This is just wrong.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be an entertaining fight. New Jersey's got a great card on their hands. But let's move over to another cancelled card. Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill is officially off, but we get an even better replacement fight. Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates. This fight I can't pick between. Because you know what? As much shit as you want to talk about Ian Gary, and there's a lot of shit to say, the guy takes tough fights. He wants to prove that he's the best in the division. I think he was Shavkat Rakhmonov's biggest test. This guy wants to bang. And to be honest, I don't think you can hate him as much on the personal side because he says, I want to test myself. I'm the best. I'm the only person in the division that will take this fight.
I still find his living situation funny.
It's not everyone's cup of tea.
But I won't go into it. It is what it is. But he's a tremendous fighter. He showed against Shavkat that he can defend a takedown. He's still a great striker. He's quick. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did obviously not look as good against MVP in their fight. But hey, everyone has a bad night. Now going against another top striker. Carlos Prates is someone that's really on the come up. One of the fighting nerds, undefeated, getting sensational knockouts. To take that fight, someone that's lower ranked than you, respect. Like, you got to give a lot of respect to Ian Gary. He took the fight against Shavkat on short notice. Now he's taking this fight again on a bit of a short notice. You got to give respect to Ian Gary. And I don't know if it's more entertaining than Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree. I think that was a pretty good fight. But 2 strikers, I'm here for it.
Well, the reason why I say that is this is a spotlight on the next generation of the welterweight division. Okay? Because really, most divisions are at this point where there's a lot of old guys in the division and we need some new blood. Ian Gary, say what you want about him, he's made a name for himself, whether it's his wife writing a book about him or he's going out there and taking tough fights. He's made a name for himself in the division. He's in the top 10 of the division, had a great showing against Shavkat. This fight is saying, hey, we're the next gen of this division and we're going to put on an absolute banger. I can't wait to see it. Ian Gary, let's be honest, he's a top 5 fighter in that division.
Well, look, Jack Della's going for the title and Aussie bias removed, I would say Ian Gary is a better fighter than Jack Della.
All round he's a better
Just as an all-round fighter. So, like, he's someone that could be potentially fighting for the title. Like, he's that good and he's got that level already. So for him to fight someone lower ranked than him, it's just you got to tip your hat to him because he doesn't need this.
Carlos Prates was supposed to face Jeff Neal. Okay, that fell through. Jeff Neal injured. They thought they may hold off on that. They didn't. Now, I think people are not avoiding Prates, but he's known to be a knockout artist. He's known to be a tough fight. Ian Gary said it's probably going to be one of the toughest tests in the division. So it's going to be an entertaining fight. But on the Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill front, Khalil Roundtree came out and said, this will be getting moved to a later date. This
think-
might be on a pay-per-view, or this might be on another fight night, but that fight is not done.
Well, they've had some words to say about each other, so I do want that fight to happen. And it does. It is a fight that's like, two former championship contenders. Someone needs to go back down the pecking order. Someone needs to go back up
Jeez.
into that title contention.
What do you do if you're Jamal Hill and you lose?
It's tough.
That's so tough, mate. You saw how he was. Jamal Hill, this is the tough spot of the UFC sport, is losing after talking a lot of shit. And the fans have kind of given shit to Jamal Hill because he has these takes online. He got Magomed Ankalaev right, beating Alex Pereira. Let's not hold him accountable for that one. But again, he's talking a lot of shit. He hasn't really backed it up. Now he's going in there against a great striker, Khalil Rountree, who really tested Alex Pereira and just lost in the later rounds. It's just going to be a striking fest. It's who's the better striker. Yuri proved that Yuri was the better striker on the night against Jamal Hill.
And this is another thing, similar to Steve Erceg. Jamal Hill, yes, he has lost, but he's lost against top caliber opponents. Alex Pereira, Yuri Prohaska, former champions. Now you look at Steve Erceg. He's lost to Pantoja. He's lost to Brendan Moreno. He's lost to Kai Kara France. Yes, you can maybe look and say losing streaks are bad because they always are bad.
But you're losing to the best.
He's losing to the best of the best fighters in that division in the world. So maybe they just need a tune-up fight just to get back into a good rhythm, get a bit of confidence back. I think Steve and Jamal Hill are kind of in that same stage right now. But, Jamal could win. Let's not count him out. Khalil did look better against Alex Pereira than what Jamal Hill did, but Jamal Hill is still a bad guy.
I can't wait to see. I'm assuming it's going to be an absolute fireworks. That's what Khalil Rountree does. He's been putting those type of fights on, Muay Thai background. You love to see it. Now let's move on. Ilia Topuria has said the only reason he vacated the title was because the UFC promised him that he would be getting a lightweight title shot. So I'm going to go out and say it. That can only mean that International Fight Week, it's Islam versus Ilia Topuria.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be as soon as International Fight Week. I hope it is. But Ilia has said this multiple times. Volkanovski has come back and said the same things, reiterated. The only reason I think he did drop the title was because he got guaranteed a title shot. Why else would he do that for? Because why would you drop your championship status? I think he's number 3 in the pound for pound. Why would you give up your status at that number 3 as champion to go up and fight someone where you might lose if it's not going to be a title shot? There's no point in him facing Charles Oliveira. It just doesn't make sense for him.
His management have said it as well. They said, listen, his team might be saying one thing and saying, no, he needs to earn it, but we've been promised another thing. And I just think it makes the most sense in that division. It would be the most entertaining. It would draw the most eyes. People want to see it. Ilia Topuria is a massive name right now. He's getting streets named after him in Spain. He's one of the most followed athletes in the UFC. He's changed his nickname to the Legend. He's probably going to put future lightweight champion in his bio pretty soon. I want to see the fight. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later because, listen, if Ilia hasn't fought since October, right? Islam Makhachev won in 1 round earlier this year. He's ready to go. They're both fresh. Make it happen while it can happen.
Especially because Islam won in 1 round. I don't want to have to wait to see him in Abu Dhabi back in October again. I want him to fight next month, and I want him to fight 4 or 5 months after that. I want him to be an active champion. He's the pound for pound number 1. One of the, I think, if not the most followed fighter in the UFC as well. So he needs to be active. And Ilia Topuria, if he's going to give up this title, he should have been fighting in Miami, or he should be on a fight card. The next one, Merab's thing was already announced for June. So International Fight Week could be on. And then if he
They
does
haven't
win
made
that,
any big announcements on it yet. Really, the only big people that they can announce for International Fight Week comes up Chimaev.
versus DDP.
Most likely, that's probably the way they're going to go. John Jones versus Aspinall, or Islam versus Topuria. Name another. It's the UFC's WrestleMania. This is usually their biggest card. And I know Dana has sometimes under-delivered on the biggest cards like Noche, but they're going to put a banger on, and it's just going to be either one of those 3 fights. Actually, let's do that. Out of Khamzat versus DDP, John Jones versus Aspinall, or Islam versus Topuria, which fight do you want to see more? That's huge.
I want to see Jones versus Aspinall, only because John Jones is the GOAT, and this will solidify him in everyone's mind if he does win. And the fact that Tom Aspinall has been holding on to that title since November of 2023, that the fight needs to happen, more so than Islam Topuria, because John Jones...
That can wait
because Tom Aspinall's been very patient. Extremely patient.
If you're talking about which one's going to be the biggest draw, it's going to be John Jones Aspinall. If you're talking about who deserves it more, it's John Jones Aspinall. Aspinall's been waiting, negotiations at 3 a.m., holding the duck in the crowd. He's been waiting for John Jones. He's been one of the longest reigning interim champions of all time. I think he is the longest reigning. So I think that makes the most sense. Khamzat DDP, that's going to happen either way. And that's going to,
I don't-
it's
and
it's if DDP survives. But I think, look, Islam and Topuria, it can happen, but it could also wait. It could also be, Topuria has to prove himself before he faces Islam.
But
So
that could happen in July. It could happen in August. Like I could see International Fight Week though. Like that heavyweight fight needs to happen. That's the one that everyone's been penciling in for that day. It's kind of disappointing if it doesn't happen. And DDP versus Khamzat, from what I've read, people are worried that Khamzat might not make weight, so they don't want to put it as the headline fight. It's going to be a co-main event fight. So we could get DDP and Khamzat on International Fight Week as the co-main.
in his United States debut.
So
That'd be great to say, new passport.
From what I'm reading in the rumour mills, that's going to be the co-main event of International Fight Week, and I hope that does happen as well because that'd be the best card of all time.
Now, in other news, Conor McGregor came out after BKFC, a BKFC event, I believe, in Philadelphia. Conor McGregor answered questions from reporters and said, listen, look, right now, I just don't have it in me anymore. There's something drawing me back to his home country. He wants to go back to Ireland and fight for his people. And he said, these were his words, I'm happy with what I've done. Is this a final concession? That's the end of Conor McGregor.
Look, if you're Michael Chandler, you're crying watching this footage because this is the first time I've actually heard Conor concede that this might be it. This might be over.
Yeah.
And if you're really if you thought he was coming back before, this should just remove any sort of hope that you had because if he's considering, anytime you speak to a retired fighter, they say it's when you don't want to start going through the training camps, when you don't want to wake up early and start training, when it starts to get, a bit more bothering and it doesn't become as fun, that's when they give up and that's when they retire.
Yeah.
So if Conor's saying this now, I'm done, I feel like I've done enough, he's already put it in the back of his mind that he doesn't want to do this anymore and it's finished. So
Once you hear those thoughts, it's done.
Yeah, so McGregor's done. I'm sorry for any McGregor fans, me included. This is terrible. But you never know. That means, is it UFC? He's done with the UFC?
Yeah, because I think boxing might be a little bit easier on him. You saw how he went 10 rounds with Floyd Mayweather, and he looked good. Watch that fight back. Very entertaining fight. He went 10 rounds with the best of all time. So he could just go into the boxing when TKO do boxing, because he's still contracted for 2 fights with the UFC unless he retires. So, again, when you hear the words, I'm happy with what I've done, it sounds like it's done.
And look, let's be honest, guys. If he's actually serious about this political run, have you ever seen any active politicians fight in a cage? Never.
No, it doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
I
So,
mean, the closest we got was Elon Musk versus Zuckerberg
Yeah.
and their CEOs.
yeah, so you're not going to get an active politician or someone that's going to aspire to be the president of Ireland going to jump in any sort of combat sport. So, look, he's choosing his decision of whether to go fight or whether to go into politics, and it's just whichever one's probably going to make him more money.
Yeah, drop a crypto coin like all the other presidents.
Hey.
Clean up.
I would buy it,
Yeah,
but it's
I would.
shameful.
Okay, now this one's a bit funny. Okay. Saudi Arabia is getting into absolutely everything. Now, Turkey El Sheikh has brought Zack Snyder, the director of Justice League, and Dana White together to direct a movie about the UFC. It's going to be called Brawler.
Brawler is the name of the film, and I've heard Turkey El Sheikh, if you actually look it up on YouTube or on TikTok, and you see him talk about his love for Zack Snyder, the way he actually describes Zack Snyder's movie, it is a bit odd. It's a bit too good. It's a bit weird.
To me, Justice League was shit.
Look, Batman vs Superman, top 3 shittest movies of all time.
Yeah.
And just because of the hype, and that's made me hate Zack Snyder. Look, Zack Snyder's if you don't know, it's like everything's slow, close zooms, very dramatic. I don't know how that's going to be good for the UFC. You need action. You need combat. You should have got someone that's a bit more up-tempo in their directional style.
I mean, Turkey El Sheikh just looks like he's just like a kid that just wants to do whatever the hell he wants. Hey, I want to buy boxing. Hey, I want to get into UFC. I want everything in Saudi Arabia. Hey, let's make a movie here. I'm going to get Zack Snyder, and it's going to be produced. Executive producer is going to be Dana White, and the story is going to be about an up-and-coming UFC fighter that comes from the slums, and then he's fighting for a champion. We've already seen Never Back Down. You know what I mean?
He's diversifying Saudi's portfolio. Maybe he's got instructions from MBS, who's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, to say, hey, look, we're doing well with the boxing. You've signed the UFC. Let's maybe bring in some cinema. Let's bring in some cinema for the Saudi Arabian people.
Is it going to be set in Saudi?
I don't know. Maybe it is like some little Saudi guy that's just coming up in the UFC. I don't know. I don't know what angle they're going to be coming from. I don't know if Zack Snyder's the best director for a Saudi Arabian story. I think it's got to be an American one just because of his, at least, cultural history. But Zack Snyder, look, he's produced bangers before. Maybe this could be a banger.
Well, I'm sure the marketing budget's going to be top notch when the Saudis are behind it.
Over under 300 mil.
Yeah, it's a $250 million film, and it only breaks even if it does $1 billion.
Yeah,
with the marketing.
So look, Dana's going to have to pull his finger out as well.
Okay, and I'm going to take you to Melbourne now, where I'm interviewing UFC fighter Jonathan Micallef, who won the Dana White Contender Series. He won his recent bout at UFC Sydney. Let's see what the chat is all about. I'm here with Jonathan Micallef at the Australian Elite Team Gym. Jono, pleasure to be here. Thank you for welcoming me into the gym. Let's get straight into it. How does it feel? How was the high of winning your first UFC debut?
It was incredible, man. You know, like it took a while for me to come back to earth. I was sort of in the stars for a little bit there. But we're back now. We're back to work and we're focusing on what's next.
Well, when you found out that you were fighting Kevin Doucette, did you think that, maybe you were getting fed to the wolves here by the UFC after a pretty successful Dana White Contender Series?
Look, I know how good I am. My team knows how good I am, but I think that they didn't. You know, they wanted to test me. They wanted to see if what I've been saying and, how we talk about myself was really true. And we got put to the test and we proved to them that, yeah, we are of that caliber.
Well, recap the fight for me, okay? Because he really kind of changed his striking once you were peppering that body. You could see you left a footprint on his chest area. I don't know if he underestimated your striking, but where did you think you won that fight?
I think just with volume, if anyone saw that fight, they would have seen that I threw close to like 30, 40 kicks, and most of them did land. It was through volume and just sheer will. Like at the end, I sort of Kevin. Some say that Kevin won that round. I think that I still put in more damage than he did, but it was just the volume and my movement that he just couldn't deal with it, and he couldn't make the changes to win the fight.
You said he did pretty well reading the kicks and where they were going to land towards the head or towards the body, and that's probably what stopped the decision in the end. But overall, very happy with the UFC debut?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I would have liked to have gotten that first round finish with a couple little tweaks there. It would have happened, but, that's where the experience is, and the next one is what we're going to look for.
Well, after a very successful Dana White Contender Series, what was harder to prepare for? Dana White's Contender Series or Kevin Doucette on a month's notice? Because Dana White, it's short notice, and also you don't know much about your opponent. You get thrown in there, and it's a high-pressure situation. What was harder for you?
Yeah, I would say that the UFC debut was a bit harder, especially because we had that bit of extra time to prepare for it. And the UFC debut is one of them things that, for me, I've been looking at for 6-7 years of my life now. Since I was a kid, I was looking forward to one day making it to UFC. And when it did come and everything came to fruition, it was like the pressure was built. But I guess they say pressure makes diamonds.
Now, talk to me about your up-and-coming through the regional scene here in Australia. What's the path from Hex to the UFC?
It would be probably the way that I went through Dana White's Contender Series. But before you do that, it's just fighting the toughest guys and taking those fights, Like, throughout my career as a pro and as an amateur, I took all the hardest fights and I didn't shy away from it, And sometimes I took fights on 2 weeks' notice, but it was just about staying competitive, staying in competition. That is the way to do it.
And you've bounced back before. I mean, you've taken a loss. You don't have that mythical, on your record that UFC fighters want. What did you learn from, having a loss on your record?
Yeah, I think that with that loss, I gained so much. It was a few things. It was first that you can't slack off and cut corners. Not that I did cut corners, but once you take a loss, you start to look for the hard way. You start to look for the way to do things more difficult and really turning over every stone. And that is what I started to do. On top of that, I started to focus a bit more on my recovery because I do think that I overtrained a little bit for that fight, and in those mistakes, they're the gems that make you a better fighter and a better martial artist in total.
Sometimes taking a breather, having a rest.
Yeah, man.
Gets you right. Now, talking about being in Hex and on the regional scene, you're very well known here. You're very well known in Melbourne. A lot of the Australian fight fans know you. What's it like going from being a very good, well-known prospect to having to start all over again as a rookie in the UFC?
It's crazy. It is crazy, man. It's wild. But I think that's the beauty of what MMA is. It's like starting from scratch as an amateur, starting from scratch as a professional, and then now starting from scratch as in the UFC, which is the most prestigious place to be. It's incredible. Biggest
organization.
It is. It's motivating.
Now, talk me through your day today as a rookie in the UFC. You've had one fight. You knocked it off, passed with flying colours. What's the day-to-day life of a rookie in the UFC?
I wake up, jump in my Lambo, go to training.
Beautiful.
Nah, honestly, man.
Arman Sarukian, the next Arman Sarukian.
Yeah, that's it. Nah, man, it really is the same thing. What I did in the amateurs, what I did in the pros, it's the same thing now. I'm just blessed not to have to work. So wake up, train in the morning, recover, do your ice baths, do your saunas, go back in the afternoon and prepare for your next
So
fight.
you're preparing a lot more. You're not in the construction industry as much.
Yeah, look, 10 to 12 weeks out from a fight, I do start to stop working, and
Okay.
this is actually the first week where I took that off. But outside of that, it's only 2 days a week. So for me, I feel like it's another thing that sort of got me to the dance. You know, staying active, staying on the tools, doing something, and then going to training. It is such a grind, man. It's actually harder than training in itself. You train for 2 hours, you rest. You train for another 2 or 3 hours. Whereas when you're slogging it out 8 hours at work, it can get really tough, especially on the mental, which is good. And there's benefits to it, and there's also fatiguing factors for your training, which take away from it.
What was your life as an amateur, and then going into the UFC, working while training? So you would go work 8 hours, come into the gym. Do you think that could have been a detriment? Or, I mean, obviously pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah, man.
You rose to the top. Is that the route for everyone here in Australia?
I think so. I think just like anything in life, you've got to go do the hard yards before you get the benefits, you get the rewards. You know what I mean? I think that if anyone just goes out and gets it done easy and doesn't really have to work hard to get to the position they'll be in, they'll probably take it for granted, or B, they didn't really earn their spot and where they are. You know?
How were you as a builder or in the construction industry? You're rock solid?
Oh, that's a question.
We got a bad name over in Sydney. A lot of shaky buildings. You're pretty solid.
Nah, we were good, mate. Yeah, top notch. BM bathroom renovations. We did a good job.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, how important is it having a good manager in the UFC? Because you can let your resume do the talking, but if someone's not getting in contact with the matchmakers, with Sean Shelby, you're not getting a good look in, and they have to go out on a limb for you. How important is it having a really good manager that can build those connections for you?
I'd say outside of the performances and having a good coach, that's the next most important thing. From taking the right fights and getting put in positions where the reward is as beneficial as the risk that you're taking. Outside of that, it's like not having to worry about things like how you're going to get money, sponsorships, all that sort of stuff. That's for them to worry about, and you leave the athlete to focus on what the athlete needs to do, which is train and fight. And outside of that, a lot of that is sort of like it's centered away from the athlete themselves, and the manager and the coaches and stuff tend to get that.
And if you want to fight and you see someone in the welterweight division, you let your manager know, and then he passes that information on to the matchmakers?
100%, man.
Okay.
You know what? I'm not one to really vouch and jump out at specific names, especially like you said, I'm just a rookie. But as I make more of a name for myself, that's when I'll definitely start to be a bit more vocal with what I want.
Yeah, now, I mean, going through the Dana White Contender Series now, your first UFC fight, you're going to push on to your second. Does any name jump out in the welterweight division? Is there, you eyeing anyone out that you want to solidify yourself?
There are a few guys. You know, I feel like now after fighting Kevin, I've jumped my name into a spot where I can fight and start to call for some of the guys who are just below the rankings. I think Mike Mollett would be a nice, fun fight. I think that would be a good one. Outside of that, man, I'll just take whoever they give me. You know what I mean, man? Like whoever they offer, I'll take and I'll jump at that.
So you're putting your hand up. You want to get back in.
Yes, sir.
Now, we've heard that UFC is returning to Perth. There's going to be a fight night in Perth. You putting your hand up for that?
Man, 100%. If I can get on that, there's nothing like fighting for your home crowd, man. I would love that.
You've done it before. I mean, you fought in Vegas as well.
Yes, sir.
Is there something about fighting in Australia that you enjoy? I mean, the crowd loved both you and Kevin there on the night.
Yeah.
But how much would it mean to you to fight in Perth again? Second fight in the UFC back in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, have there been any other Aussie MMA fighters that have done that? Their first two fights to fight in their home country. I mean, it's sort of like such a blessing to be able to do that. And if I was to do it twice in a row, man, I'd love that.
Have you received what's the greatest advice you've received from UFC fighters? You know, you train with Jimmy, you train with, you've received some advice from Dominic Cruz as well. What do you think the best advice is you've received from other UFC fighters?
It's a good question, man. I don't. There's nothing that really jumps out at me now besides what you said, Dominic Cruz. I think what he said to me has really stuck with me, and that, you know, like he was like, "Congratulations on your fight," and I said, "Thanks, mate. You know, on to the next." And he said, "Yep, and the next." and the next and the next. It doesn't end, mate. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what makes it exciting, you know. Like now, when you're in the UFC, there is no ceiling. Once you do get the belt, there's challenges. There's the other top dogs who are coming, and I think that's what it's all about, you know.
And how important is it being in a really good gym surrounded by talent like Jimmy Crute, talent like Jake Matthews? You know, I'm sure they've given you advice on your debut as well.
Yes, sir.
How important is it being surrounded by some of the best Aussie fighters?
I think that other than having a good coach, that is the next most important thing. If you haven't got good training partners to humble you, to let you know that you're not as good as you think you are, and to give you good rounds, then you're not getting what you need. And you know, being under Jimmy Crute after a couple rounds that's that there's a lot you can learn from that, man.
He packs a good punch. We saw his last fight. I want to say it again, but now talk me through when you won the fight. You win your first UFC debut. Then you get to go and talk to Daniel Cormier. You've probably envisioned this moment.
Yes, sir.
Do you go up? Do you know what you want to say? Are you going up thinking you want to call someone out? What are you thinking when you're talking to Daniel Cormier?
Man, I had this whole plan that I had laid out in my head. You know, post-fight, I'm going to do this, I'm going to say that. But when I did get to the moment, dude, I was just like, fuck. It's all gone. It's
the
out
crowd's
window.
there, the spotlight's on you, you're on television, ESPN Plus, Chaos, you're everywhere. Yeah,
completely flustered, man. It was wild. But to be there and after envisioning it for so many times, man, it was nice. But hopefully next time I get out what I hope to say.
What did you hope to say?
I hope to call out for a 50G bonus. I hope there was a nice little statement I was going to make about, you know, the kid is here, and you know I've taken out one of the guys who've been around for a while, but I didn't get it out. But
you didn't want to drop the I'm the captain now, the captain of the UFC?
Yeah, that was there.
Yeah, that was in there.
Bro.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you spoke pretty well with him. You know, you broke down the fight and kind of said where, you know, why you think you won the fight and what separated you from Kevin. But I mean, in the post match, you went and you broke down the fight. You also had the birth of your son as well that you were coming off the back of as well, being a father. I mean, did that add more motivation for you going into that fight?
Yeah, man, 100%. There's nothing like coming home and seeing your son and being like, man, this is what it's all about, you know.
You gave him a little message on screen as well. I think after it cut off, you blew some kisses to the family, I think.
Yeah, I did always. Got to send them love, man. You know, they are a big part of what gets me to the fight in good shape. My wife and my son, they're both massive motivating factors, but they're also massive support. So to give back and send a little bit of love back is what it's all about.
Well, I want to get your thoughts on the welterweight division right now, because it's a mess. It's a lot of people dropping out of fights, especially in the top 5. We got JDM versus Bilal happening now. Carlos Prates versus Ian Gary. What's your thought on the current state of the welterweight division?
I think that, like you see, it is a little bit of a mess, but I think that's because there's so many good guys coming up. You know, you have, as you said, you got Machado Gary, you got Prates, you got Jack coming in for the belt. It is messy, but I'm hoping to clean it up a little bit after a few fights, man, and you know, get up in the mix.
I love the confidence. Now, as a UFC fighter, I want your professional opinion. Who wins these welterweight fights? JDM versus Bilal Muhammad.
That's a tough fight, you know. Like, Bilal likes to pressure people, likes to push them up against the cage, make them work, let his hands go, and then start to get the takedowns after that. I don't think that JDM's going to fall into that pressure. I think that he's too slick on the feet, and he's got good hands to keep him off of him. But if I was to put it down, I'd say JDM in the 3rd round.
Really? TKO?
Yeah, I think
Let
so.
his hands
I think
go.
he'll be able to do it, yeah.
Bilal calls himself the Canelo of the division. Well, I guess we'll see if it gets tested. But, okay, what about this fight, which is just announced, Kansas City main event, Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates?
That's a tough one, man. I don't know. That can go so many ways. Does Ian try and grapple, or does Ian try and stay standing?
I think it's going to be similar to MVP, and he tries to grapple him and mix it in. And full respect to Ian. Taking fights on short notice, fights that no one really wants to have. You know, he's game.
Yeah, that's true. But look, that being said, MVP, I think is, I would say that he's of a higher caliber than Prates is. He's very good. Prates is a destroyer. He looks solid, but I don't think he's of the caliber of MVP. I think that he's overlooked a little bit. Okay,
these are the rumoured fights that could potentially happen. Got Joaquin Buckley versus MVP.
Okay.
What do you think?
Ooh. That's
two of the best strikers of the division.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. Can Joaquin get to MVP? Can he get to his chin? I don't know. I think the MVP might be able to take that one
And
away.
last one, we've got these two going at it on Twitter right now. Colby Covington or Sean Brady?
Yeah, I think Sean Brady smokes him.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I really
He had
do.
a great showing against Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
It was a great mix of like just following the game plan. It was almost Bilal's game plan, but just better because he
Yeah.
finished him.
Yeah, well, if you look at Sean, I think that people underestimate how strong he is and how he made Leon look. Usman couldn't do that to Leon, so, I mean, you got to give him the credit where it's due, and he deserves it.
As a fighter, Chael Sonnen throws out this term. He's every fighter's favourite fighter.
Yeah.
Who is your favourite fighter? And sometimes he's referring to John Jones, or, he was referring to GSP at one point in time. Who, as a UFC fighter, who is your favourite fighter to watch?
I've got to give it to Robert Whittaker. Although he hasn't been so successful lately, man, he just has everything that I want to be as a fighter. He's well-rounded, good boxing, good grappling, and outside of the cage, he's just like a good man. He's a family man.
You ever had much to do with him?
I haven't, unfortunately, but Rob, if you ever want to get some work in, mate, I'd love to work with you.
Yeah, he's down in Sydney, one of the greats of the sport. Still got a lot left. I think he's tossing up whether he wants to go up in weight and test himself at light heavyweight.
Yes,
Or be pretty interesting, but he's done some great things at middleweight and obviously one of the best to do it. We love Rob.
Yeah,
Aussies love Rob. Now, in talking about, your UFC, your next fight, how has the preparation been in the gym now that you've had one in? Have you made any changes to your game going into your second fight into the UFC? And have we heard anything? What's next?
No, I haven't heard anything yet, unfortunately. Look, man, I'm aiming for June, July, and let's just hope that comes to fruition. Outside of that, man, when we're out of camp, we really try and work on skills. We just upskill, learn new things, fuck around a little bit, if you know what I mean. Try something new, because I think that I've only been doing this sport for 6 to 7 years, and to really be at the point that I'm at is pretty unheard of. There's a few rare cases that I've done this. So now that I'm here, 6, 7 years, I still have so much development and new things that I can unlock, and now is the time for that, And then once we get a name, we get a fight, we focus, we sort of sharpen the blades, but now we're just making new blades. You know what I'm saying,
Okay, so to testing out new things.
That's it.
Now, I ask every fighter this when I interview them, but you know the regional scene just as well as anybody. Is there anyone in Australia you think is the next big thing in the UFC? Could be someone in the gym, could be someone you're watching in Hex or Eternal. Who do you think is one of the next big things, the undiscovered next big thing in the UFC?
Well, that's a good question, man. I think that there's a lot of guys that I train with that are on their way up. I think it's a great question. You've got me now.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you see anyone like, I know in Sydney we love George Mangos.
Yeah,
he's
he's
Kings
very
Road
good.
boy.
Yep.
He's doing really well, Hex featherweight champion. I think you'll catch him on a contender series pretty soon. But yeah, who do you think is that up and coming fighter that's, could be early on in the UFC, probably can go on the next contender?
Look, I feel like in the heavyweight division, there's not really too much going on in the UFC. Ricky Bucham, who's is a heavyweight fighting out of Hex. He's also fought in Eternal, won a tournament there. He's doing a lot, man. He's a heavyweight with cardio, which you don't see quite often. And there's a few things he's doing at the moment, a few things he's polishing up, and I think that he can make a splash in there, man.
You're right, no disrespect to heavyweights, but they are just very overweight light heavyweights at most of the time. That can't move and don't have the cardio.
100%, bro.
So, when you can get a good heavyweight that moves, you look at Tom Aspinall, there's a reason why he's the top of the division.
100%. Man.
Yeah. Now, let's give a wrap up. I want to give a shout out to your Australian fans, people that have been following you. What's your Instagram handle and what's coming next for yourself?
Well, firstly, everyone that already knows me, thank you guys. Love the support. Appreciate it so much. My Instagram handle is Jono_Mika. That's it. But guys, got hopefully huge announcement coming up for June, July. So keep an eye on this space. We'll announce it as soon as we find out what's going on.
Let's go. Maybe an Aussie on International Fight Week. I don't know. Yeah. June, July sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Jono, really thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you so much, brother.
Wish you all the best. Hey, get behind the Aussies.